Hey guys, Magnus here, bringing you another video on another dead Walking Dead character. This time we are looking at Super Mario, leader of the Reapers, Pope. Pope is of course male. He is played by Richie Costa. He is early to mid-50s and first appeared in Rendition. Before the outbreak, Pope served in Afghanistan, meeting the other members of the Reapers. He carried so many of his fallen brothers that he lost count. When returning from the war, he struggled to find work and deal with trauma, so he instead created a mercenary group where he employed his old squad members. He would tour the world doing others' dirty work for them. Pope at some point also found a starving blue tick hound named Tick, who he adopted, but Tick would look at him funny and one day he bit Pope, so Pope strangled him to death. When the outbreak began, Pope stayed with his mercenary group, naming the group the Reapers. One day the bombings started happening and Pope ran through the fires to save his men. They eventually took shelter in a church, and as the fire spread throughout the town, the fire never actually reached the church, and he and his people were completely fine. Pope took this experience to mean that God had chosen them and became a sort of twisted and devoted fundamentalist. Throughout this time, he had gained a fatherly connection to his group, and at some point Leah left after her adopted son Matthew's death, but was found once more and rejoined the group at some point. Then they took out some zombies in a hospital in Rockville and eventually became hostile towards other groups. Pope would mark groups and send his men to slaughter them. This included Meridian, Maggie's old home. After Maggie and some others fled, Pope sent Montanio after them to finish them off. Pope somehow got wind of Maggie's returning and sent his group to ambush her on the road. Eventually his men returned, Leah with a captured Daryl, some others with a captured Frost, and he also instructed Agatha and Roy's bodies, which were also found, to be strung up in Meridian. He also learned about Michael Turner's death by the enemy, upsetting him greatly. In Season 11, Pope is first seen listening to Bossy cry and explain Michael Turner's death. He walks into the room with the body and tells Leah and Carver that he and God are angry and tells the others to make Maggie's group feel God's wrath. Later, Pope sharpens a knife when Leah arrives telling the fake information that Daryl gave her. Leah vouches for Daryl to stay, and Pope shouts at her for losing track of the enemy and instead focusing on Daryl. Pope then listens to Leah explain why Daryl would be useful to the group, and Pope doubts it, thinking that Daryl just wants in Leah's pants, and tells Leah she clearly loves Daryl. He then admits he believes in Leah more than the others. Pope then locks both Leah and Daryl in a burning cabin and watches them escape. He declares Daryl chosen by God and welcomes him into the group. Some point after, he asks Daryl if he believes in God and tells Daryl the tests aren't over. He drinks and tells Daryl about his story in Afghanistan and how he saw God everywhere. He then lights up a cigarette and tells him how he set up a mercenary group, but the real dirty work happened after the outbreak happened. And he tells him about how he and his group became the chosen ones by God. He points out Daryl is fine too, and that he must have been chosen by God as well. He then asks Daryl if he's hungry and brings him to the campfire. There, Pope tells Bossy to give Daryl food, declaring him family, and points out how Bossy walked 10 miles with Turner's body. He then interrogates Bossy about how he wasn't facing the enemy. Leah tells him to stop, but Pope says it's human nature to run, but tells Daryl that he got Leah out first and points out this devotion to everyone. He then says that fire is used to baptize, but also to show God's wrath, and he pushes Bossy into the fire, holding him there as he burns to death. He then declares that they're the chosen ones once again. The next day, Pope watches Carver torture Frost and gives Daryl the chance to have a go. He watches Daryl torture Frost and eventually chop his fingers off. He hears Frost give a location and Pope tells Carver, Leah and Daryl to go check it out, but Carver objects to taking Daryl, but after a glare, Carver seems to agree. Off-screen, Pope tortured Frost some more before deciding he had enough information and killed him. He placed his walker on a tree outside Meridian, and later that night Carver returns and tells Pope that Maggie and co. were there but got away. Pope is happy about this, saying it was a success, showing the walker Frost on a tree and whispering something to Carver. This may have been more info he got out of Frost, possibly Alexandria's location. When some of his men later return with no sign of the enemy, Pope shouts at them, saying, "Your brothers are dead. Are you not ashamed?" Leah tries to calm him down and he faces her off before telling his men to find his goddamn enemies. Leah radios Pope later, telling him that her and Daryl have found a man and Pope tells her to kill the man and his family. Later, Pope sees the walkers mauling around in a circle and asks Daryl if he's ever seen that, to which Daryl makes up a half-truth. Daryl suggests he leads them out, but Pope instead sends Paul Wells. Wells suddenly radios having some issues, and Pope deduces that he's been killed by the enemy, and knew it would happen. Leah objects to this, saying he was family, and Pope calls her out for having so many objections since Daryl showed up. But Pope concludes that he may have been a brother to her, but he was a son to him. He then promises the enemy won't escape this time. Pope is informed that the rotters have gone, and interrogates Daryl some more about what he knows about Maggie, and tells him about his dog Tick. Daryl then makes a joke saying he's not going to lick Pope, and Pope laughs and says, "Don't bite me either." Later the walkers return, and Pope says Maggie has turned the dead against them. He tells Daryl they won't get as far as the gate, and he watches as the zombies are blown up by his mines. He watches as the zombies do get closer and closer, and talks with Leah about the people who've been lost and says it was a necessary sacrifice. Pope watches the walkers come closer and closer and tells his men to secure the gates and ready the Watcher. Pope interrupts Daryl and Leah's moment on the roof, asking them what they were talking about, to which they say family. He tells Daryl to find Maggie and bring her to Pope, and Pope sees the walkers flooding into Meridian after Maggie sent a car through the gate, and tells Anchetta to fire the Watcher into the courtyard. Leah tells him that their people are down there and that they should alert them first, but Pope doesn't want to warn the enemy. Pope coldly tells Leah if God doesn't protect them, then it was their time. Pope tells Leah not to question the Lord or him, and he tells Anchetta to light it up, which he does. Daryl suddenly pulls out some knives and Pope faces him. Pope goes to attack Daryl when Leah does this to Pope. Stabbed in the throat by Leah. Pope holds his wound crawling across the top of the roof until Leah pushes him down to the ground and does this to Pope. Stabbed in the back of the head. Pope's body lays on that roof, and it's possible we'll see his body in episode 9 as well. It's likely that the Reapers will bury him or something, who knows. Pope was a crazed religious fanatic who believed that he was chosen by God. He was reckless in his rulership and clearly didn't mind his men dying. Although he did care about Turner, just not Bossy, Wells and the others. He's a bit inconsistent, to be honest. I found the character very underwhelming. I expected a bit more, and even doing this video now, he doesn't really do much apart from talk. It's a shame we didn't get to see any interactions with Maggie, and it's a shame he didn't do anything more, and his death was kinda underwhelming. Anyway, that's my video on Pope. We'll have to see how Leah acts as the new Reaper leader. He had an interesting backstory at least, but that's not very interesting on screen. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video on Pope. Tell me your thoughts on him, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.